We begin today the Gemara on Daf Chof Aleph, Amud Aleph, 4 lines from the top of the Amud. The Gemara here brings a simin cheresh chovash zman, which is a combination of letters that have the names of the Amiroim that are going to come here in the Gemara. Now this Gemara is actually in the middle of an Inyan, which started before on Daf Chof Amud Beis. Over there was also a simin in the middle of the Amud, Eved, Bayis, Chatzam, Bayis, Eved, Krevim. So the last point that we learned here, the Gemara is speaking about a person that's makdish a stay achuza in Eretz Yisrael. What happens? The question was, could he redeem it halfway? Or could he borrow loive, or v'goyel lachatzoin? So the Gemara brought a brayso that says that there's a pasuk that's marbe, clearly that you can. There's a double lashon in the pasuk, go'el yigal, that says you can redeem it halfway. But the Gemara explained, the Braisa explained that without this pasuk, then I would compare makdish te'achuza to a person that sells a bayis in an ir chayma, sells a house in a city that has a wall around it. What's the halacha with such a house that has a wall around it? You cannot redeem it halfway. And I would compare makdish te'achuza to this house that's sold in this city. So therefore, I have a special pasuk to say that no, gol yigal, it could be redeemed halfway. That's the Braisa that the Gemara brought before. So now on this, the Gemara is going to bring a question. This comparison that you're saying, we would learn out a person that's makdish, as de'achuza, from a house and a ir chayma that's sold, that just like there it can't be redeemed half, so too when you're makdish a de'achuza, you can't redeem it from hektish halfway. Why should we compare that? I see when it comes to a house that's in a ir chayma, I see that the Torah takes away the koyach legal olam, that you can't redeem it forever. You have 1 year to redeem it. So maybe because we see this point that you can't redeem it forever, so you also can't redeem it halfway. Taima b'makdish, but on the other hand, when it comes to being makdish a property, sheyipe koyach legal olam. Like this, you're able to redeem any time. So maybe over here you would also could redeem it halfway. So why do I need a special pasuk to teach this to me? Why would I compare b'chlal makdish te'achuza to selling a house in ir chayma? The answer is because I could compare makdish te'achuza to moiches te'achuza. When you sell a te'achuza, dekele meima neheder dini and teisi b'metzad. That now this comparison, this din that we want to learn out from bayis ir chayma, and we just explained how you can't, but I could then bring in over here also selling as de'achuza, and then I would learn out makdish de'achuza from selling as de'achuza. Now when you sell as de'achuza, the pasuk there clearly says that you also can't redeem it halfway. And I would say as follows, teisi b'me'atzad, we learned this out with the tzad hashav, and the Gemara will explain what this tzad hashav is. Moiches de'achuz yechiach, you're telling me you can't compare being makdish te'achuza to selling a bayis and ir chayma. So I'll say, you know what? Let's prove it. Let's learn it out from selling as te'achuza. So there, when you sell as te'achuza, you can redeem it from the buyer forever. And ve'ein loive v'goy lachatzan. And still the halacha there is that you can't borrow and you can't redeem it halfway. So I should say that the same should apply to when you makdish to hektish. It could also be redeemed forever, but still it should be the same like selling this te'achuza that you can't redeem it halfway. But then you're going to ask me on that, which is a svara the Gemara brought before already. When you sell a property as te'achuza in Eretz Yisrael, so here we see that the Torah weakens the koyach because you can't redeem it right away. The halacha is when you sell a property, only after 2 years could you redeem it. So how could I learn out hektish, being makdish as te'achuza from moiches te'achuza? By hektish you can redeem it any time. You can redeem it right away. So so then you'll say, let's go back to the other case that we wanted to learn out from. When you sell a house in the ir chayma, over there it doesn't have that limitation that you have to wait 2 years. You can redeem it right away. But then on the other hand, you're going to tell me when you sell a house in ir chayma, you can't learn out from there either, because over there also it shows in a hurak koychay that you can't redeem it for more than a year. So hektish can't be compared to either one of these. Says the Gemara, now v'chazar adin. So now, like every tzad hashav, the point of a tzad hashav is when you have a certain svara, in our case, a hura koychay, that applies to ir chayma, bayis near chayma, and you have a hura koychay that applies to selling as de'achuzah, but they're not the same hura koychay, it's not the same thing. So then I say, loyri zeh keri zeh, They're not exactly the same svara. And therefore, the concept of a tzad shava is, if they're not the same, then they're not the cause of the din. So what is the cause of the din? It has to be something else. It has to be a common denominator. So, and I say as follows, Atzad shava sheba, and the common denominator of all things over here is shenigala. That we see over here, they could be redeemed. Whether you're selling a ste'ah chuzah, whether you're makdish a ste'ah chuzah, whether a bayis b'yachayim, they could all be redeemed. And ve'ein loive v'goy lachatzayin. But you can't borrow to redeem, and you can't borrow and you can't redeem halfway. So afani avi. So again, the tzad shava, actually, we're learning out from the two. We're learning out from the two of bayis yachayim and from moiches de'ah chuzah. Just like over there, you can't redeem halfway. So afani avi makdish. So too, when you are makdish a ste'ah chuzah and you want to redeem it, sheniga, it also could be redeemed. But ve'en loive v'goy lachatzayin. You can't borrow to redeem, and you can't redeem halfway. That's what I would say. And that's what the Brisa before said, that you need a special pasuk, Gol Yigal, to say that you could redeem from hektish halfway. Now, on this tzad hashava, Amalei Mazutra B'Reid Rav Mari L'Ravine, so there's still a question, there's still a pircha on this tzad hashava as well. Ikele Mifrach, we could refute this comparison here. Malat tzad hashava shebehen, these two that we're trying to learn out from, the Meiches De'achuzah, and the Meicha Bayis Bar Echaima, Shekain Hura Kaicham, they have both the same thing that shows in a weakness of them being able to be redeemed, Ligal B'Shana Shnia. In the second year, both of them can't be redeemed. That's because in the Bayis Bar Echaima, you only have 1 year to redeem it. So by the second year, you can't redeem it anymore. And by the Meichas De'achuzah, you have to wait 2 years until you redeem it. So in the second year, you also can't redeem it. Time of Magdish, on the other hand, when you Magdish a property to Egdish, you could always redeem it, including the second year. So you can't learn out from them to say that just like they have this weakness that you can't redeem halfway, that by Magdish you also shouldn't be able to redeem halfway. So Ravina answered him, because I'll bring in a third case from where we're learning out for this tzad hashava. We're not going to learn just from two, but a third one. A Evidivri sold to a guy will prove the point here, which is by this Evidivri sold to a guy, he could be redeemed any time, the first year, the second year. But you can't borrow to redeem, and you don't redeem him halfway. So I would learn out makter ste'ah chuzah from there, together with the other ones that we mentioned before, that also, but you can't redeem halfway. So therefore, you need a special pasuk to say that by hektish you could redeem halfway. Rav Huna bar Chinana asks Rav Sheshes another shaila regarding selling the house in a ir chayma. Nigal lekrovim, could it be redeemed by relatives, or ein nigal lekrovim, or it can't be redeemed by relatives? So regarding this house, it doesn't say clearly in the Torah if relatives could redeem. The person himself that sold could redeem, but do we allow relatives to go and redeem? It doesn't say. Do we say ge'ulasai mistei achuz gamar? That it says the term ge'ula by the house that you sell in a ir chayma, sorry, and it says that the term ge'ulasai as well when you sell a property is te'achuzah. So I compare them and I say as follows: mas te'achuzain and a gelas lachatzain. Just like I compare them to say that if the ste'ah chuzah cannot be redeemed halfway, and also v'nig eles l'kroivim, by the ste'ah chuzah, the pasuk clearly says that a relative could come and redeem it. So af hainami, so to the bayis and the ir chayma, so ein negel lachatzain. I compare that you can't redeem it halfway, and also v'nig l'kroivim, that it could be redeemed by a relative. Or maybe no, I don't learn out this detail of it being redeemed by a relative, because kiksiva geula b'chatzain u'dichsiv. In the pasuk where it uses the term geula regarding a ste'ah chuzah, it's written in the pasuk where it's speaking about it not being redeemed halfway, because the lashon of the pasuk over here is kedei geulasai, yashiv geulasai, that is. So 1 second, kedei geulasai. Yeah, it says the term kedei geulasai, so that means full. Only if you can redeem it fully, not halfway. So I only learn out that detail, but the kroivim like siv, it doesn't use the term kroivim. Sorry, it doesn't use the term geula, that is, when it speaks about the fact that relatives could redeem. So I don't compare necessarily the halacha of a bayis in the ir chayma to a ste'ah chuzah regarding the fact that relatives could redeem. Amalei, so Rav Sheshes answered this shaila, ein nigal, that the house, the bayis bir chayma, cannot be redeemed by relatives. It's interesting, he gives its answer, he didn't bring any raya, but this is his answer. Now this, the Gemara is going to bring a few questions. So Eisvei, the Gemara asks from what it says in the Brisa, there's a pasuk that says, B'chol u'v'choil eretz achuzaschem. That's the Gemara doesn't quote the whole pasuk. U'b'choil geula titnu, and in your land geula titnu la'aretz. There should be a geula. So it's not clear what this pasuk is referring to. So it's extra pasuk, and this brisa says l'rabbis batim ve'evedivri, that were marbe, houses that are sold, and evedivri also that can be redeemed. Now, what exactly is this ribui? What this brisa is saying is not clear. So, my love, don't you think what this brisa is saying is bate orechayma, a house and a city with a wall, that you could redeem it through relatives? That's the ribui here. We know you can redeem a house in the city, but the ribui here would be that you could even a relative could redeem. So that's a question of Rav Sheshis that said that Krevim can't redeem. And it says the Gemara loy batei chatzerim. What the Brisa meant when it said l'rabbis batim, it meant to say to be marbe a house that's in an open city, that could be redeemed by a relative. Frek the Gemara batei chatzerim b'adik sivbu. Regarding a regular house in an open city, over there's a clear pasuk that relatives could redeem, because it says as dei haaretz yachashiv. The pasuk says that such a kind of house in a regular city, open city, is compared to a stay achuzah. So if it's compared to stay achuzah could be redeemed by a relative. Says the Gemara, but ahu l'koy v'chayva. The other pasuk the Brisa brought before, bakoil geula titnu, is adding that not only could a relative redeem, but he actually has an obligation to redeem this house. This house that's in a regular and open city, so the relative has an obligation, if he has the money, to redeem it. Now the Gemara brings a source of in a Brisa of one Tana that says this. Rabbi Eliezer in the Brisa says this. The Tanya, the Brisa says, v'golis mem karachiv. Pasuk says you should redeem what your brother sold. Rishos, that means that you have the permission. We allow you to redeem. Atoim Rishos, you say that you are able to redeem. Maybe the pasuk is saying you have an obligation if you could afford to redeem. Talmud loima v'ish kilayir loigayel. There's a pasuk that says that what happens in a situation if someone doesn't have any relative to redeem for him. So the Tana the Brisa asks, v'chiyesh adam b'Yisrael she'en loigayelim. Is there anybody, any Yid that doesn't have any relative, a distant relative, all the way back to Yaakov Avinu? Elazeh sheyesh loy. What this means is the person has a relative, but he's not interested in helping him and redeeming. Likach, he doesn't want to go and buy the property for him. Shah reshus biyadeh. So yes, it's his reshus. If he wants, he can redeem, and if he wants, he doesn't have to redeem. Divrei Rabbi Yeshua. So here, that's Rabbi Yeshua's opinion that says that it's not a mitzvah, it's not a chayva. But Rabbi Eliezer says, "V'golos mem karachiv chayva." When it says you have to redeem, it is an obligation. Maybe it's only a reshus you have, but it's not an obligation. Talmud loymar, and here Rabbi Eliezer brings the pasuk quoted in the previous brisa, "Bakoil geula titnu." What is this pasuk coming to say? Akosov kovei chayva. The pasuk is coming to say that it's an obligation for a relative to redeem. So this is a source we could say that is going on batei chatzerim, on houses where the Torah says a relative could redeem, but it's an additional pasuk making it an obligation. But it's not a question on Rav Sheshis that says that in a bayis in the Ir Chayma, a relative cannot redeem. Now, Omri le Rabbanan le Rav Ashi, Rabbanan asked Rav Ashi about this, or Omri le Ravina le Rav Ashi, Bishleim le Mandam le Rav is batei Ar Chayma. According to the opinion that this pasuk that we just quoted about Koil Geula Titnu is coming to add that even a bayis in the Ir Chayma could be redeemed by a relative. That's what the Gemara wanted to say in the beginning. Hainu d'chsiv bakoil. We can understand why it's adding this word bakoil. Bakoil is adding another case that it didn't say in the Torah otherwise. A new case. Bakoil means another, when you marb something more. But el mandam l'rab is batei chatzerim my bakoil. According to the opinion that the bakoil geula titnu refers to batei chatzerim, a house in a regular city, that the pasuk already said that it could be redeemed. It's just coming to add that it's an obligation to redeem, but you're not adding really anything more. You're not adding another type of house. So my bakoil, why the pasuk should use this term bakoil, everything? What else is it coming to add? It's not. Says the Gemara Kashya, that taka remains a question. Hey, Svei Abaye asks another question, what Rav Shesha said, that again, that a house that's in an Ir Chayma cannot be redeemed by a relative. So the Brisa says, Ma tamud loima, why does the pasuk repeat itself again and again? And this is where it talks about a yid that sold to a goy. So it says 3 times, Yigalenu, Yigalenu, Yigalenu. 3 times it says that he can be redeemed. It says over there that Echad me'echav Yigalenu, his brother could redeem him, his uncle could redeem him, his cousin could redeem him. So 3 times it says the Yigalenu. Gimel Pamim. L'rabbis kol ha'geulos. From here we learn out all the different times the Torah speaks about redeeming different things. Shenegalis keseder hazeh. That it's redeemed in the way it says it over here in the pasuk, that a relative could redeem, And the pasuk goes through a certain seder, a close relative, first a brother, then an uncle, then a first cousin, then any other relative. So now it says here, kol hagulis. So it says the Gemara, my love, batari chayma, ve'eved ivri. Don't you think that this includes even the batari chayma that could be redeemed by a relative, or eved ivri that could be redeemed by a relative? So Avsheshis before said, batari chayma cannot be redeemed by a relative. Answers the Gemara, loy bati chatzeirim uzdei achuza. It's only coming to be marbe bati chatzeirim in open cities or uzdei achuza. So the Gemara asks, bati chatzeirim uzdei achuza behad yiksiv. Over there, the fact that a relative could redeem, it says clearly. By uzdei achuza, it says clearly that a relative could redeem, and then by bati chatzeirim, the pasuk says al uzdei haaretz yachashiv, that it has the same halacha as uzdei achuza. So why do I need over here this extra yigolenus to tell me that they could be redeemed by a relative? It says the Gemara, Kedama Rav Nachman by Yitzchak, like Rav Nachman by Yitzchak said elsewhere, that l'karev kaidim. That what we're learning out is not the very halacha of the relative redeeming, but we're learning out the seder, that it says in the pasuk by a yid sold to a guy, that the closer relative has the obligation to redeem first, and if he can't, then you go to the next relative, and then a further relative. So hachanami here, l'karev kaidim. That's what we're learning out, the seder of the relatives that have to redeem. Now says the Gemara, Heiche itmer the Rav Nachman by Yitzchak. Where was this statement of Rav Nachman by Yitzchak regarding the seder of the relatives redeeming? Where did he originally say this? Says the Gemara, Ahadi Bayaluhu. He said it regarding the following shaila that was asked: Eved Ivri Animkel Yisrael. An Eved Ivri is sold to a yid. Nigal lekroivim. Could he be redeemed by a relative? Or ain't a nigal lekroivim, or he can't be redeemed from a relative. So this is a shaila actually that came up before. So the Gemara says we had before already that aliba the Rebbe, according to Rebbe's opinion, loyti bayalach. This is not a shaila because the Amar Rebbe said before in the Gemara and a Kavachaymer that mi she'ein nigal be'ele nigal b'sheish, that the Eved sold to a yid, he can't be redeemed be'ele, which is these people mentioned in the pasuk by an Eved sold to a guy that is redeemed by a relative. But he does go free after 6 years. So Rabbi clearly said that an Eved sold to a Yid cannot be redeemed by a relative. Al malay mifrek, he can't be redeemed by a relative. The shaila is according to the Rabbanon Mai. What's the halacha? What's the boy based on? Do I say Yalfinon Sachir Sachir? I learn out the Gzeir Shava of Sachir Sachir, the term Sachir that says by an Eved sold to a guy, to an Eved sold by a Yid, and Veloy Darshi Yigalenu, and I will not darshan the word Yigalenu. Yigalenu is in a miut, that only this Yid sold to a guy. Or perhaps I say Yigalenu when it says by a Yid sold to a guy that a relative could redeem him, that's Lezeh, only when he sold to a guy, but Veloy Lachir, not another Eved, not the Eved sold to a Yid. Toshema, so the Gemara brings a raya for this, and here quotes the same brayso that was brought earlier, that when it says Bakoil Gula Titnu, what's this pasuk referring to? So the brayso said L'Rabbis Batim, and before the Gemara explained, it could be referring to Bati Arichayma or to Bati Chatzeirim, and then the brayso also said Ve'eved Ivri. It's coming to say that an Eved Ivri could be redeemed as well. So my love, Bati Yarichayma, as we said before, the Bati means Bati Yarichayma. And when it says Ve'eved, what does that mean? Ve'eved Ivri anim kol Yisrael. Eved Ivri sold to a Yid could also be redeemed by relatives. That's what this pasuk is coming to be marbe. Says the Gemara, Lloyd, there's no raya from here. Because I could say what it means when it says Eved Ivri, it means Eved Ivri anim kol akum. Eved Ivri sold to a guy, and that he could be redeemed by a relative. Frek the Gemara, but Eved Ivri anim kila akom behed yiksiv bei. Over there, the pasuk clearly says, "Oy doido, ben doidi galeno, his uncle or his cousin is redeeming him." Why do we need another pasuk to say that a relative redeems him? Answers the Gemara, Hahu l'koy v'choyva. We need an extra pasuk to say that a relative has an obligation to redeem the yid that sold to a guy. And here the Gemara adds, "Vafile l'Rabbi Shua." And even Rabbi Shua would agree to this, that it's an obligation. Before in the Gemara regarding a property that's sold, Rabbi Shua held it's not an obligation. You have the ability to redeem. But here, Rabbi Shua would agree, in order for this yid not to get mixed and assimilated amongst Goyim, you have obligation, a relative has obligation to redeem him. Another ayah, the Gemara again brings it back, the brayso that was brought before. Tasha ma tamad loima yigalenu gimel pamim. In the pasuk, when it speaks about the Eved Ivri sold to a guy, it says 3 times yigalenu. L'rabbis kol hagu'ulos shenigalos keseder hazeh. All the different things that the Torah speaks about that could be redeemed is redeemed, like over here it says in this pasuk. So my lab, don't you think it's coming to include also Bati Arichayma v'Eved Ivri anim kol Yisrael? So that's even Eved Ivri sold to a yid, same like the Gemara said before. So the Gemara answers again the same answer. Loi batei chatzeirim is referring to houses in open cities. Ustei achuzah. and a stay achuzah. Not to have a divri sold to a yid. You can't be redeemed by a relative. Fact the Gemara batich atzeirim had yiksibu there. The Torah clearly says that al stay ha'aretz yichoshev, that it's compared to this day achuzah that it could be redeemed by a relative. Amar Rav Nachman by Yitzchak lekarev karev kaidem. Here's what Rav Nachman by Yitzchak also said. This is the original statement where Rav Nachman by Yitzchak said that we're not learning out the fact that a relative could redeem. We're learning out the fact that it goes in the order that the pasuk said, that you start with a closer relative, and if he can't, then a further relative redeems. Going back to the Mishnah, so a nirtza, so he gets acquired to his master by ritziyah, which is piercing the ear. Clear pasuk that you pierce his ear and then he gets acquired to his master until yovel. The pasuk says that v'avodei lo'olam there, that he serves his master till yovel. V'avodei means v'loyas haben v'loyas habas, but he doesn't serve not the son or the daughter. And when it says lo'olam, it means lo'olam mishal yovel, until yovel. Tana Rabbanah, we learned in Abraisa the details about how this ritziyah, the piercing of the ear, is done. Martzeya, when it says in the pasuk of martzeya, ein liyela martzeya, it's only this tool that's made for piercing an ear, some kind of a metal tool made for this. It says in other Rishonim this is also used for leather, making shoes, a certain kind of tool, a specific martzeya for this. But minayin l'rabis hasoil. How do I know I can include also a soil, which is some kind of a wooden utensil that's sharp? Or va'asira, as she says, there's a thorn, or va'machat, a needle, va'mikadeyach, or a big drill, va'michtev, which is what's used to engrave. So these are not made to pierce an ear, but how do I know that I can do the mitzvah of the piercing, or this to acquire through this piercing with any of these? Talmud loima v'lokachta. In the pasuk there it says, by martzeya, that it's the lashon of the pasuk. 1 second. It says v'lokachta es martzeya. V'lokachta means l'rabis kol davar shenikach b'yad. Any tool that you can take into your hands. Divrei Rabbi Yosi bar Yehuda. Rabbi says no. Ma martzeya miyuchad shel matches. This martzeya is a metal utensil. Av kol shel matches. You could only use a metal utensil. Dover acher. Another pshat in this brayse. Ha martzeya. When it says in the pasuk ha martzeya lohavia martzeya gadol. It has to be a large martzeya. For this metal tool that's used for this piercing, it has to be a unique large one. I will soon explain how you learn it out. Amar Abalaza Yudin Beribi Hayadoirisht, that Yudin Abalaza said that Yudin Beribi Darshan Keshehem Reitzim Ein Reitzim Ela B'Milsa. When they do the piercing of the ear, so they pierce at the bottom, which is called the earlobe, right? Is that Now what it's called in English? I got it right? Yeah, the bottom of the ear. The Chachamim say no, we don't pierce the milsa, the soft part of the ear. Because ein eved ivri kayin nirtza. We know, and as the Gemara soon is going to bring the source for this, that an eved ivri, which is a kayin, his ear cannot be pierced. And the reason for it is because then he becomes a balmum and he can't go back to do the Aveda. So if you say that you pierce the soft part of the ear, so why are we saying that you can't pierce his ear because he becomes a balmum? That part of the ear, if it's pierced, is not considered to be a mum. If he's pierced and higher up in the ear, where the part of the ear which is harder, tougher, and over there, as the Gemara says in Bechayris, he does become a balmum there. Okay, so therefore we see, so there's machlokes in the location exactly which part of the ear is pierced. So now the Gemara will explain this entire brayse. First of all, b'mai kamiflagi, what's the machlokes that we had in the beginning of the brayse regarding what utensil is used here for the ritziyah? Tanakama said, Rabbi Yosef bar Rabbi Yehuda said, you can use all kinds of utensils, metal, wood. Rabbi said it has to be dafke metal. Says the Gemara that Rabbi darish klali uprati. Rabbi darshans the pasuk with a klal, a prata klal. Now the way a klal, a prata klal works is that even though you have a klal which is coming to be marbe, but whatever you're being marbe has to be ke'en haprat, has to be similar to the prat. So therefore, now what's the klal, prat, the klal that I have over here? V'lakachta, you take anything, it says klal. Then it says martzeya, so that's something specific. It's saying it has to be this piercing tool, that's the prat. Then when it says ba'oznayu badeles, that's chozav v'kala, that's another klal. It's interesting how this is another klal, because l'chayre ba'oznayu badeles is just referring to the ear and to the door. So some say that you have to add over here into the Gemara the lashon of the pasuk where it actually says v'nosata be'oznayu badeles. That v'nosata is the other klal. So klal uprat the klal, iyatadon ella kena prat. So therefore, well, even though we're marbe, but it has to be similar to the prat. Ma prat mefurish shel matches. So just like what's specified in the pasuk is metal, avkol shel matches. So even though we're marbe other things because of the klal, but it has to be similar, it has to be metal. Rabbi Yosi dorish ribuy miyuti. Rabbi Yosi darshans the psukim differently. He darshans the ribuy miyut. Now, if you darshan ribuy miyut, so then the way you darshan it is there's a ribuy, there's a miyut, there's another ribuy. You really marbe everything. The only thing that you mamayit is one thing. Otherwise, you marbe everything. It doesn't have to just be kena prat. So therefore, here we say, well, lekachta riba. Lekachta means everything. Martzeya miyut. Martzeya means only this martzeya. Now, when it says Bosni Badel as Chosa v'riba, so we'll marbe everything. Riba, umiyet v'riba, that's how you understand the pasuk. So riba kol, you marbe everything. So my Rabbi kol mili. Well, marbe, you can use any tool, it doesn't have to be just metal, it could be even wood, it could even be a thorn. My miyet, so but there has to be one miyet. So what is it that you're mamayet? Miyet sam. It's mamayet, if you have some kind of sam, some kind of potion that will pierce the ear, that can't be used. Now, right to the Braisa, Mamar, the Tan and the Braisa said, Ha martzeya, lohovi martzeya, God said you have to use a unique, large martzeya. My mashma, where does he see it in the pasuk? Kedam Rav, as the Rav said regarding another pasuk, when it says Ha yerech, says regarding the is of gidanoshe, it is hamiyumene should be yerech, the stronger one, the right, only the is of gidanoshe is only on the right yerech. Hachinami, Ha martzeya, miyuchat should be martzeya. It means there has to be a unique martzeya, a large martzeya.
Only one thing that means.
Could be
because
hamartzeya.
Because the pasuk says v'lekachta es martzeya. Could have said v'lekachta martzeya.
Right. So it has to be
dafke.
dafke.
It says es and
okay,
hey.
could be. So hamartzeya. Yeah. Amar Rabbi Lazar. Then the Braisa said, Yudin b'ribi hayedoirish k'shein reitzin ein reitzin ela b'milse. That you do the ritzia, the soft part of the ear. V'chacham maimerim ein evedivri kayin nirtza mipnei shenasa balmum. That we know that an Ivri that's a Kayin cannot do Ritzia because he becomes a Balmum, so it has to be higher up in the air. Frek the Gemara. So what's the source of this? Veyasa Balmum? So what happens if he becomes a Balmum? Amar Rabba barav Shile, Omakra, but the Pasuk says regarding this Evedivri, even the Nirtza, when he leaves by Yovel, that Vishaval Mishpachtoi, that he has to go back to his family. What does it mean go back to the family regarding a Kayin? L'muchsek shav Mishpachtoi. He goes back to the status that he had before in his family, that he was a Kayin, that's not a Balmum, and he's able to serve in the Beis HaMikdash. So now in connection to this, another Shaila was asked regarding an Evedivri that's a Kayin. Evedivri Kayin, Ma'o sheyimsule Rabbi Shifcha Kananis. Can his master give him to marry the Shifcha Kananis? What's the basis of this Shaila? Do I say on one hand, Chidushu? The whole concept that a Yid could marry a Shifcha Kananis, a guy, the whole thing is a Chiddush. So if it's a Chiddush, even though usually it's also for you to marry even a Yisrael, so I say Leishna Kainim and Leishna Yisrael. So this heter, this special Chiddush is for Kainim and Yisrael as well. Or I should say, no, you can't compare. Shani Kainim, Hoyal Viribe, Ben Akasav, Mitzvahs Yisaitis. We know Kainim have extra mitzvahs, and even over here regarding who they can marry. Can't marry a Zayna, Grusha, and so on. So Rav Rav says, Mutter, that the Kayin, the Evedivri Kayin, could marry a Shifcha Kananis. Shmuel Ama Aser. Shmuel says it's Aser. Ama le Rav Nachman le Rav Ana. So Rav Nachman tells Rav Ana, Ki Yavisu Bei Mar Shmuel, when you were learning by Shmuel, and he said this halacha, that the master is not allowed to give him a Shifcha Kananis, Be'is Kumudri Italalisu. You were playing with cards. That's what Rashi says, which basically means it's an expression that you weren't really paying attention to what he was saying. Because if you were, you should have asked him the following obvious question. My time meha. Why didn't you ask him on this that he said that it's also for the Kayin Evedivri to marry the Shifcha Kananis? Ask him from the following over here. The Chachamim say, Ein Evedivri Kayin Ner. So you know why an Evedivri Kayin cannot have Ritzia, piercing of the ear, done with Neshanasa Balmum. Because then he's going to become a Balmum and he can't go back to his family the way he was before. But now, V'im Taima, Ein Rabbi Moisle Shifcha Kananis, if you're going to say, like Shmuel says, that the master can't give him to marry a Shifcha Kananis, so then it's simple why there's no Ritzia that applies to Evedivri Kayin. Because what does the pasuk say when an Evedivri says he wants to remain with his master? To be, a hafti es adoni es ishti ves banai. It's only if he got married to a Shifcha Kananis, and he says he wants to stay with his family that he now has, his wife and his children that he has over here. And Veleke, if I have Ivri Kayin, you cannot do Ritziyah, so he can't say that. So the whole concept of Ritziyah doesn't even begin. So that's what he should have asked Shmuel. The Gemara concludes in this Suloi Midi. Nothing else could be said about this, and the Gemara doesn't give any answer to this question. So since we brought up over here this shaila regarding the Eved Ivri, the Kayin, whether he could marry a Shivcha Kananis, so the Gemara asks a similar shaila regarding the Yifas Tayar. So Yiboy Elohu, Kayin Ma'o be Yifas Tayar. Could a Kayin marry a Yifas Tayar, which is the halacha the pasuk says in the beginning of Parshas Kiseitze, that a Goya, a non-Jewish woman, a Yifas Tayar that he finds in wartime and he brings her home, he's allowed to be with her, he's allowed to marry her. So does that apply to a Kayin as well? So do I say Kidushin, the whole concept of Eishes Yifas Tayar is a Chidush, Lo Yishna Kayin v'lo Yishna Yisrael, so it applies to a Kayin like a Yisrael. Oidel me Shani Kayinim are still different. Hoyel v'ribe ben mitzvahs Yisraelis, since there are extra mitzvahs by them. So over here again, Rav and Shmuel argue. Rav Omar Mutter, and Shmuel Omar Osir. Now the Gemara here brings two versions in what exactly the machlokes of Rav and Shmuel is. So Rav says, the first version is Bibir Rishayna, regarding the first time to have a relation with this Yifas Tayar, the Kulam lepligi d'shari. Everybody's going to agree that it's allowed. The Leitibra Taira Elo Keneged Yetzahara, because the Taira is allowing this man because of the Taiva, and we don't want it to be over on the Isser. The Taira knows, the Eibush knows he can't hold it back, so the Eibush was matter it. So that's even for a Kayin. But kipligi be shniya. The question is if you can marry her and be with her later again. Rav Amar, even for the second time, it's still mutter, and Shmuel Amar, so Shmuel says it's also. The Gemara explains, Rav Amar mutter, because hoyav ishtiri. Once he was with her once, so we see that the Kain has already lived with her, so he can remain. Shmuel Amar aser, but Shmuel says no, but it's aser later on because the ha'aviyula giyatis. True, the Torah was matter the first time because of Dibra Torah Keneged Yetzahara, but she has the status of a giyatis. And the Giyatis, L'kayin, Lo Yechazya. A Kayin is not allowed to marry a Giyatis, and the reason is because one of the people a Kayin is not allowed to marry is a Zaina. And every Giyatis has the status of a Zaina. So over here, you can't marry her either.
But it's a Chiddush Torah. That's part of the Chiddush.
That's the first time.
Yeah, for the first time only. That emphasis over here in this sugya here, there's a big machlokes between Rashi and Tosfos, how to learn this inyan, because in the simple pshat of the Gemara, it looks like that she's only a giyatis after by the second bia, meaning the first time he's allowed to have bia with her right away without any gatus at all. And then the pasuk over there describes different things you have to do, and then the bia shnia second time, then she has to already be a giyatis. That's what it's mashmir in the Gemara. But Rashi actually says that she's already a giyatis the first time. If she's a giyatis the first time, what is this dibra Torah Keneged Yetzahara? She's a giyatis. The answer is the gatus the first time is not a real gatus. It's a gatus ba'inus, forcing her to accept the gatus, to be materet. That's the dibra Torah Keneged Yetzahara, even though it's not a real gatus. But the second time, you have to wait to see if she agrees to stay, and then the gatus is beratzen. But even then, it'll still be asa to the kayin, because a giyatis is asa to a kayin, because it's a zaina. This is one version. But Ikadamri, others say the opposite. Bibi is shniya, the second time to have a relation with her with the Yifas Tayar, kulam lepligadas sira. Everyone agrees that it's going to be asa. Because the Havila Giyatis, she's a Giyatis, has the status of a Zayin, it's asa. Ki pligi bibi rishayna. The argument is the first time. Rav Amamuter, the Holy Dibra Torah Keneged Yetzahara. It's mutter because that's the whole point of this Keneged Yetzahara, and it applies to a Kayin like a Yisrael. Ushmuel Ma'aser, because Kol Heichet the Karina Bay, because the whole thing that we see the Hati, even for the first time, only applies when you can continue what the pasuk says later, V'haveisal Teich Beisecha, that you could then bring her into your home and marry her and be with her afterwards. That Karina Bay V'risa Bashivya, that you see her in captivity, that you could be with her the first time. But if you can't, then marry her later. So the whole parsha, even the beginning, does not apply, and therefore doesn't apply to a kain. Okay, let's just finish off this. There's one more brayse here regarding this halachas of Yifas Tayar. So the pasuk says you saw this woman in captivity. This means b'shas shivya. Only if by the time of captivity you went and you took lechatchila to marry her. If you took a lechatchila, let's say you captured her, you wanted to sell her as a maid, then you change your mind later, it's too late. It has to be bashivya. Then when it says eishes, afil eishes ish, that includes even if she's an eishes ish. Yifas Tayar, why is the pasuk describing her as Yifas Tayar? Because Dibra Torah ele keneged Yetzahara. This whole thing is a hat that the Torah says because of the Yetzahara. And the svara is mutav sheyochel Yisrael basat musais shchutais. It's better for a person to eat an animal that's about to die, but you shecht it before it dies, and then it's kosher. Val yochel basat musais nevelis, and you shouldn't end up eating the basar of an animal that dies, which is a nevela. So here as well, the Torah is matter it. Then the pasuk says v'chashakta, and you desire, and so that means af pishenah. That even if she's not beautiful, doesn't matter. It's if the person has the taiva. Then when it says ba v'loy ba b'chaverta, this is only one woman that the het is for, and not to bring a friend as well too. V'lokachta likuchin yesh lecha ba, that this Kidushin that takes effect over here, because so here's where Rashi says is shitteh, that even though she was a guy, but you're being megayeh her. That's what Rashi says, but you're not being megayeh her midaita, so it's not a proper gatus. But nevertheless, the Torah is saying v'lekachta, that the kedushin takes effect. Then it says liisha, that means shleikach shtei nashim. Liisha means you're taking one for you as a wife, but don't take two, even if it's not two for yourself. But achas loy v'achas la'aviv, you bring one for yourself and one for your father, or achas loy v'achas la'bnoi, one for you, one for your son. Vehavesa, you bring her into your home. Melamed shelo yilchatzana b'milchama. That teaches that you can't have any relation with her over there in the war. So Rashi learns this Gemara Kipshuta that the whole heter is not over there in the war; it's for afterwards. But Tosfos has a whole different shot of it. There's a long Tosfos here, and Tosfos says that no, the heter of the bia is in the war because the whole thing is divrei Torah connected Yetzirah. Tosfos has a different shot in the lo yilchatzana. Okay.